Good morning and welcome to day 4, number 103 with the man, Frank Scalish. The man with the boat, the man with the boat, the man with the trailer, the man catching bass out of his boat. How does that feel to be able to say that, Frank?
It feels very brand new. It feels very new and exciting.
Fill everybody in on, we saw the Instagram post.
Yes.
And it appeared to be you in a functioning vessel breaking ice to catch either late winter, well, midwinter where you are, midwinter largemouth.
Absolutely. It was, let me tell you guys something. First of all, it's been a long time coming because nobody could figure out the problems with the outboard. And Todd, the Hydromotive, my prop guy, has a buddy of his that really works on the two strokes a lot. Fast Bass Marine by Lake Barkley. And Tim's a good dude. And he said, I think I can fix your problem. So, 8 hours and 15 minutes down the road I go. I drop the boat off. I come back home. I said, call me when it's done. And so he contacted me the other day and said, I got it. Everything's A-okay. It's perfect. Come and get it.
Wow.
And, so I went down there, and I'm not going to bore you with all the logistics of what a lot of the problems were, but
can you give us a truncated version? Because we're vested at this point.
We're vested.
This is like that bad relationship that your friend keeps telling you the details about. At some point, you just are like, all right, I'm in this. This is a real life soap opera, and I got to see it through now. So you've got a vested audience who wants to know how it.
Okay, so there was some issues in the fuel rails that he corrected. There was issues with the compressor pump that he corrected. Some of the issues were actually on the manufacturing side of that compressor, but got it all fixed up, worked out, 3 compressors later. Then a new OEM lower unit put on it because the lower unit that I had purchased prior to that imploded. It was an aftermarket. I should have known better. Imploded. So we got all that worked out, fixed up. All the glitches are gone. It starts. You just touch the key.
Look at it wrong.
Yeah, and it's it's ready to go. It's running good. It's running right around with empty without my tackle. I'm over 75. With all my tackle, I'm right around 72.9, 73. Which is where I want it to be. Everything's good. So I took off and picked it up over the weekend, and I had some lures I was finishing up. I redid a bunch of road colors for all you guys. I did a dozen road colors.
When are those gonna be out on LureNet? Like, are those like colors that you're working on, or just colors for you and Frankie?
No, those are colors that are coming out.
Ooh. When are those coming out?
I can't give you the exact date right now because they're still being driven down to the plant. So they don't even have them yet. They should have them today. Actually, they should get them today.
That's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Now, some of the colors I'm fishing with already, obviously, because I always fish with the colors that I paint, just to make sure they're up to snuff. So anyway, I picked the boat up. I got home and I was finishing up everything Monday, and I'm like, you know what? I got to go catch a fish. So Tuesday, I got up Tuesday, and the funny thing is, I got up at 5:00, and then I'm like, what am I doing? It's freezing out.
Yeah, no.
We had unseasonably warm weather the last week, but there's still ice on a lot of the lakes. Well, there's not anymore now today, but we had ice out there, and I'm like, man, I'm not going. I'm just going to I shut the alarm. I went back to sleep. I woke up, made breakfast, piddled around the house for a little while, and I go, I better get going. If I'm going to go, I better go. By the time I got to the lake, it was, like 11 o'clock. I was like, holy smokes. And it was Valentine's Day. So I told my wife I'd be home early so we could, do the dinner thing. And so I fished for about 2 hours. And
Looks like you caught one too.
yeah, I caught about 9 or 10 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a little tougher than I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't that tough considering that I narrowed it down in 2 hours. You know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%. And it felt good. Everything. Now, I had not seen your boat with the motor. I hadn't seen the, hey, here's my boat pick.
Oh, here, I got a boat pick. I wonder if I can do this.
I'm sure you can. We'll make you big. But I had not seen it. But it's a very sharp vessel, Uncle Frank.
Well, I appreciate
with
that.
The blue and the dark, and then you've got the blue. Yeah, there you go. And then you've got the blue in the Pro XS. Is that a new addition? The blue in the Pro XS that matches the hull?
No, it's not a new addition. I got a better shot of that.
No, it looks good. That's a sharp looking boat.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's actually I get a lot of compliments on it. I bought it used, so it's not actually the colors that I would. Let me see if maybe it's not actually the colors that
I guess if you were to describe that to an iTunes listener, it's kind of like a Duke Blue Devils blue.
Right, and it's actually the blue is actually blue metallic. So it's blue with blue metallic in the stripe, in the pinstripe. And then of course, my main legend stripe is white, and then my hull is black. The top of the boat cap, let me see if I should have one here. I know I did. Yeah, there it is. So the top cap looks like that.
There you go. Wow, do you wet sand that and stuff to keep? I mean, because the boat's 10 years old.
Yeah, the boat's in 09. So basically, realistically, what I do, the truth of the matter is I speed wax it every single time I take it out of the water.
No, you don't.
I do too.
You're one of those guys.
No, I'm not one of those guys. I became one of those guys with this boat because what I realized is that because the boat is old and it had been wet sanded, rubbed and buffed.
Yep.
But I don't know how many times the guy previous to me did that. So I'm petrified to do it again because
you don't want to go too deep.
Right. You don't want to go too deep. So
okay. What do you use speed wax wise? Because I know this is what a lot of guys are wondering. Like, what do you do? Is there a product that I can look up?
Yeah, and I can't believe I can't even remember the stupid name of this stuff. Frankie turned me on to it. It's unbelievable. It's
well, for the next week or two.
It's a blue bottle. Hold on.
Is it Lucas Oil Slick
Mist?
Yes,
Lucas Oil Slick Mist. Best stuff in the world. That is by far. I do it on all the black rubber, the black plastic, the entire boat, my trailer, everything. Oh, trailer. We'll get into the trailer next too.
Hold on, I'm trying to pull this up here.
Slick Mist. Yeah, Frankie turned me on to that, and that was a blessing in disguise. I literally buy that stuff 6 bottles at a time. So what happens with that?
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. Lucas Oil Slick Mist. So what happens with that stuff is when you put it on your boat and you wipe it off the boat, okay? When you go in the water, you don't get a lot of that scum line. And then if you do, truthfully, you could wipe it off with a damp rag. And it comes right off. No water spots, no nothing.
Now, what are you using? A microfiber? You just buy a big pack of microfibers at like an AutoZone or something. You throw them in a box with the Slick Mist, and then you just spend 5 minutes, wipe the thing down after every time.
Every time.
All right, that's not psychotic.
No, I'm not Charlie Hartley, where I, you know, armor all the inside of my
Mm-hmm.
wheel wells on my truck and stuff like that. I'm not that anal about it, but I do keep it clean all the time, always. I'm just nervous. I want to wet sand it and buff it so bad, but I'm petrified.
Yeah, you don't want to get down to the quick. That'd be like doing your nails too much, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you got no nails left. You need to quit doing your nails."
Right. Well, the thing is you get down to the metal flake, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing it. I'm just not. So I have to keep it clean. But then I had uh, rust spots developed on the trailer, um, and then I got holes in the trailer, but I didn't like where the holes were because they were up by my tongue where the triangle part is.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my brother. He sold his body shops. Now he's got an off-road shop that he started, F&D Off-Road, in Solon, Ohio. But because he's a truck dude. Anyway, and so I said, John, can you look at my trailer? Blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, bring it up here Wednesday. So
Mm-hmm.
yesterday I brought it up there, and I'm thinking, I'm getting ready to leave town, so I need to get this thing done, dude. What are we looking at? He goes, oh, we'll do it today. So we went in there, and I'm very cautious about, I don't want my trailer to crack in half on the road. So what we did was, I'll just show you the triangular piece we cut out by the tongue of the boat.
Okay.
We cut that out.
Okay.
And then basically replaced it.
Looks brand new.
Yep.
It's almost like he's got a body shop.
It's almost like he knows what he's doing, right?
Yep.
And so, and I used to work for him at his body shop too. And you got to realize something, man. Because we were crawling on the ground on the concrete floor,
Mm-hmm.
kneeling down, crawling around there. We got the grinders going. We're trying not to burn the wires. I got cardboard taped up all underneath the bottom of the boat so I don't get the metal
Mm-hmm.
chips burning into my fiberglass. We did all that. And I'm holding the wires up, and he's grinding, and there's sparks flying, and I'm laughing. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, dude, I'm not built for this crap. It took me 2 minutes to get off the ground. My knees hurt so bad from kneeling on the concrete.
That's funny.
Yeah, but we got it.
I want to go because there's a lot of people who are still talking about the how you take care of your boat after every time. So I got turned on to the Lucas Oil stuff because every time you get the new Bass Cat, they give you a pack of the Lucas Oil stuff in the boat. Now I also use, and neither of us have any affiliation with any of us. This is strictly on What the Hell Works.
And what I'm using, yeah.
Lucas Oil A+. The other thing that's A+, and I'll tell you the only reason I bought it, because this stuff is kind of expensive, is because Josh Bertrand uses it, and I really like Josh Bertrand. What?
That's a testament.
Yeah.
To Bertrand.
Yeah. It's the Boat Bling hot sauce.
Oh, okay.
So that gets like water spots. It smells amazing. It does a really, really, really good job. And then when you're done with the hot sauce, you come back and hit them with the quickie sauce. And it dries in like a little bit of a haze. And then you go back with the haze and wipe it, and it, bam, pops.
Oh, I'm going to try that stuff.
Yep. But the hot sauce is what you use after it gets... See, Jordan says it smells bad. I think it smells amazing.
See, I think
I would huff this stuff.
Yeah, I think the Lucas stuff smells amazing.
Yeah. So you hit them with the hot sauce afterwards. After you get off the water, that gets the water spots. It protects the wax, doesn't strip anything, and then you nail them with the quickie sauce. Available on omniafishing.com.
Perfect.
You could order it before 1 today and have it in your hands by the next day.
Yeah, I'm writing it down right now.
It says offering the same quick protection as traditional paste wax with the fraction of the time, Perfect for fiberglass painted surface and detailed. It's a blend of Montan wax and sealant, fast drying with a classic waxy haze during application. Surface protects for months.
Perfect. Look at that.
There you go.
Outstanding. So that was kind of the thing. I do have a correction.
Okay.
I made a mistake at the last show.
I've never seen someone so tore up over an eighth of an ounce in my life.
Well, yeah, because it makes a difference. And I had my jig box here. And for those of you that don't understand what goes on here, all the windows are taped off in here. And when I have the box laying down there, it's dark where my jig box was, and I have every compartment has just a label on it that says, 1/2, 5/16, 7/16, 9/16, blah blah blah. And it was the football jig, the Jewel football jig was a 9/16, and I inadvertently said 5/16. So I wanted to correct that because it was driving me crazy. Because I'm telling you, you're bouncing this thing on the bottom, and then you guys are going to get the 5/16, and you're like, the damn thing never hits the bottom.
All right. We're going to be taking questions today for day 4 with Frank Scalish. So if you have a question, get it in the instant feedback. We'll ask it. I understand there's probably a lot of you guys with split screens. We have the BPT going on at the same time and day 1 of the Bassmaster Elite Series.
Perfect.
That being said, that being said, get your questions into Frank. But before we get into it, without going the political route, what in the hell is going on with that? And how close is that to your house?
Okay, that is on the Ohio River by Pennsylvania, Ohio border near Steubenville. It's actually in East Palestine, Ohio. And what happened was now you guys got to understand something. I did not report on this thing.
Yeah, but you're just an Ohio person. So, I mean,
right.
Basically there's a chemical spill on a train that dealed,
right.
And now it's like Stranger Things in Ohio.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Stranger Things. I couldn't get through that. But anyhow, 150 cars derailed. 20 of those 150 had hazardous materials on them. And basically one of the axles broke, and then of course all the cars derailed after that. Anyway, there were 20 cars with 20 of the train cars had hazardous material on them, which started to burn, and so they were petrified that it was going to, have this mass explosion. So what they did was to prevent this uncontrolled explosion, and then God knows what happens to everything. I guess they dug a trench around the place, and then they opened up some of the cars and let the chemicals drain in the trench, and then they lit the trench on fire to give
that's what you're seeing there,
right, to give it a controlled burn, so it wouldn't cause untold amounts of damage with an explosion. So I guess the EPA the EPA said they tested and haven't detected any levels of concern. But I'm I'm not a conspiracy kind of guy, but there was a lot of chemicals not to be concerned about.
So that being said, one knocker exclusive colors still available on lurenet.com.
Yeah, and speaking about that, remember that BTL, capital BTL.
Oh, yes. What are you laughing at?
Because
did you not like that transition?
We go from massive
Listen, you reported on the news, and you were a couple sentences away from. There was nothing else you could say about it, so I got you out of the situation.
Well, actually,
you dealt with it. What else did you want to say about it?
Actually, I have some of the surrounding streams and the fish kills.
Oh no!
Yeah. So anyway, we'll get into that. So BTL capital BTL 100 till June 30th, 15% off. Okay, on lurenet.com.
Hold on, let me edit this. Use code capital BTL 100 at lurenet.com to get
15% off till June 30th. That was part of our day 100 promotion for for you guys being loyal listeners and watchers
Okay.
of the show.
Hold on. Save show. Is that correct?
Yep, that's
Whoa.
perfect.
You sounded like that dude who used to do all the commercials before. Do you remember that guy who was the fastest talker in the world and he would do all of the disclaimer stuff at the end?
I do remember.
Can you do that again? Do that one
No.
more time. That was impressive. Dude, that was the fastest I've ever heard anyone actually talk, Frank. I'm not kidding. Did anyone else catch that or was that just me?
Use BTL code 100 at lurenet.com to get 15% off.
Dude, you could be a sketch artist and a disclaimer reader.
Okay, perfect.
If this painting and design thing doesn't work out for you.
Well, so far it's working out. So we're gonna stay in this. We're gonna stay down this road.
All right.
So anyhow, so of course, the EPA comes out and says, "Hey, nothing to see here," which I don't buy for a minute. There's a stream bed that ran through this area, and unfortunately, it drains right into the Ohio River. That stream, they had 3,500 fish killed in that stream after the plume went up.
That's not good.
The only there's no good things about this, but a bright side of this is the farther this stuff leaches down the stream, the more diluted it becomes and the less of an impact it has. So chances are by the time it actually gets to the Ohio, it'll be diluted enough not to be so detrimental. That's that if that's a positive. I don't know if it is or isn't. And again, this is what I garnished off of news reports. This is not my personal opinion. It's what I garnished off the news reports. Quite frankly, I have opinions about this stuff, but accidents do happen. What are you going to do? You got to make
talk
the
about
best
bass fishing for the next
That's
half
what
hour.
we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing. We're talking about.
I've had several emails. There's also someone on the instant feedback who was talking about it. And it has to do with skirts. You did a football jig episode last week, Frank, and you talked about how you had your skirts separate.
Correct.
Can you go into a question? How you build the skirts, what you're using as the collar of your skirt, the best way to figure out, because I know it's easy to do.
It's very easy.
But I also know that if you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to do it, because I don't know how to build a skirt. I've watched it done with the tabs and all that stuff and what you order.
Right.
But can we spend either an entire show where can you do something right there where you actually build skirts during the show?
Oh yeah, I could put my fly tying vise right here.
All right.
I can do everything right in front of you.
Okay. Is that can we do that for a show then?
Yeah, we can. We're going to do skirt building. Skirt building 101.
Yep.
So here, that's a great thing. So let me write that down so I don't forget. And then, okay, so what I use is I always use the mouse ear collars. It's a little ring with two little mouse ears on it that can incorporate a rattle if you choose to have a rattle. Always use those because they're not that much more expensive. We're talking, not tenths of a cent more money than just a regular circled collar. And I always use the mouse ears because I always want the option. Rattle, no rattle. I don't like sticking my rattles into soft plastics because it changes the action of the soft plastic that hangs behind the bait. And I don't like to stick them in the soft plastic when I'm putting them on a jig parallel to the hook shank into soft plastic, because a lot of times the bass crack the rattles.
Okay.
So I like to plastic rattles that go into the mouse ear collars. Now, when I'm making my jig skirts, you have to be very cognizant of how much material you are using, because too much material will do several things to your jig. A, it will slow the fall rate down a lot, and B, it will also hamper the action of the skirt material.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't want to you don't want that. You want to make the jig, I'm going to say sparse, but not truly sparse in a lot of situations. So what I try to do is I use about 2 tabs, 2.5 tabs. And that's how I do it. Now I do a lot of layering effects, and I mix the rubber up together, so I can get very modeled looking skirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I can show you that when we do the show. I'll show you tricks with painter's tape, how to make life real easy for you. And then
Great
I'll
question.
Yeah,
That's a great question. Great suggestion by the listener.
Yeah, I love it, actually.
Show and tell.
Well, what it's going to do is it's going to give you guys a little more versatility in skirt choices. But understand this: there is gobs and gobs of beautiful skirts on the market today, just because of the advancements they made in that skirt material technology. I'll get you brand names of skirt material too.
I like it because I need to add that to my arsenal this year, whether it's, traveling around all the country, whether it's a swim jig that I want to shad or a bluegill, a football head based on those colors. So,
I'll even show you better ways to trim the stuff up when you're getting ready to fish them. Sometimes you want them to balloon and marshmallow mushroom out.
Yep.
Sometimes you want them to teardrop and get real sleek and slender, and I'll show you tricks to that.
Listen, this is something that I think is interesting. I wonder if you've ever noticed it. I always wondered why A, mop jig worked, B, a full-size jig worked.
Yeah.
Because if you put a jig in the water, it's nice, compact, skirts up against the plastic, and then you put it in like a fish tank at a fishing expo, and the thing just goes poof.
Right.
And you're like, what? Well, if you actually look at a crawfish, you've got tentacles that are 5-6 inches long on a 2-inch crawfish. You've got 6 legs on this thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff waving around beside the actual body. And that gave me a lot more confidence to use fuller skirts on football jigs because it actually represents what they look like on the bottom. And I also wondered, well, why the hell would something that's the color of a rock and look like a rock when you're not dragging it? Why would you suddenly feel donk?
Because
it's because of that skirt.
Yeah, it's always moving. If you do it properly, it's always moving in the water. If you do it improperly, the jig's too bulky and it just clunks. Mm-hmm. It doesn't want to open up. It doesn't breathe. So you want it to breathe. There's times when I'll do real sporadic skirts, even on spinner baits. There'll be like barely any skirt material, but that's a different issue altogether. So we can deal with that.
Okay, Stu, with a question. He says he's from Northern Kentucky. He's trying to learn the Ohio River near Cincinnati. Do you have any tips for that productive juggernaut of a fishery?
Yeah, you gotta figure out, okay, there's certain pools on the Ohio River that fish better in the creeks, and there are certain pools that fish better on the main river body itself. There's also times a year when the main river body fishes way better than the creeks. So as a general rule of thumb, in the spring, you're going to look near or in the creeks. Those fish are going to go off sooner. You have to realize there's some fish on some of the bigger creeks and river systems that never really go back to the Ohio. They get up there and they stay there. And then there's a faction of fish that live forever on the main river of the Ohio. Personally speaking, I like the main river stuff. It fishes better for me, although I've won a ton of money up the creeks. Some of the creeks are silting in really badly now, and so the spawning habitat for the largemouth isn't as prevalent up there as they used to be. So you're gonna see more main river spawning behavior. The main river is really susceptible to dirty water conditions. So you have to watch the rainfall and everything else that's going on. Because when the Ohio gets high and muddy, it's tough, and it'll be easier to catch fish going up the creeks. But some of the pools don't offer enough of them to matter, so you're always going to be stuck on the main river system on some of these pools. And understand you're not fishing for 25 pounds a day there. Um, it's just not that it's not that prevalent anymore. You're fishing for, a handful of bites, hopefully 5. And
Okay. We struck a nerve with the skirt thing. Jay's Outdoors Adventures. Heck yeah. I wire tie my skirts and it's a pain. I would rather use Uncle Frank's easier method. I have hundreds of jigs because I wire tie. And then JT saying, I noticed that the mouse ear collars help I've noticed this too on the Eakins jig, help stabilize the jig on the bottom, especially on smaller ball head finesse jigs. Have you noticed that almost like a tripod effect?
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy enough thing is I used to hand tie my jig skirts too. We went into that on one of the previous episodes. I got sick and tired of having to carry so many skirted jigs in my boxes, because then I would be, well, I lost 2 of this color, so now I got to tie them up. So I would have 6 or 8 of every color, and my jig box weighed 400 pounds, and I had 2 of them. And I'm like, no, there's a better way to do this, because this is how I store my spinner baits too, guys. None of my spinner baits have skirts on them.
That's unusual, Frank.
Well, it is, but none of them have skirts on them. I've got probably 4 or 5 spinnerbait skirts that I really like. They're separated in the thing, and when I fish Bassmasters, hell, most of my spinnerbaits never even had blades on them. I didn't put blades on them until I got there and saw the water conditions, and then I made them up as I was fishing. That was a little anal. Now I narrowed it down to a handful of blade combinations, and I just don't store them with skirts. Here's the other reason, okay? They dry faster. They don't rust as much because your skirt material's not holding water. Your trailers all come off. After you're done fishing, that trailer comes off. If you pack them away with the trailer on them, all you're going to do is rust everything out because of the salt impregnation.
So run through it. You're throwing a jig. It still has a good hook on it. You built it a couple hours ago. You're done fishing for the day.
Right. So I pull the trailer off. I shake the jig out. And then when it's dry, I put it back.
Do you take the skirt off?
No, I won't, because I've already trimmed it for that jig. I've already trimmed it up and made it nice and pretty for that jig. So that'll be my jig of choice. Now, if I'm going to practice, I'll practice with that one. But I do one of 2 things. I'll take a jig that can't be sharpened anymore because the hook's no good, and I'll cut the hook off. Basically, I keep the shank straight with just here. We'll just do this. Here's how I do my practice jig. Just so we're,
or AKA Frankie's jig.
Yeah, or AKA my son's jig. So this is how I cut the hook.
Yep.
So when I put my soft plastic on it, now obviously there's no skirt on this. So when I put my soft plastic on this thing, it's got something to hold. All right, it's got something to hold. And I'll just put a drop of super glue on it and shove it up against the collar. And that'll become my practice jig. And then I'll fish that in practice till I wear the skirt out of it. And then I don't have to use a good jig for practice. I don't have to waste one. And that's what I do. So if you open my jig box, you'll probably see 4 or 5 jigs with skirts on them. And then all the rest will be no skirts on them at all. And then I use those until they're no good anymore. and then they become practice jigs. But see, now I don't fish the tournament trails anymore, so now they're all
Yeah, you got no need to be shaking them off now. It's
no. There's no
the,
shaking. There's
you
no
eat Uncle
shaking.
Jig's Uncle Frank's jig, and you meet Uncle Frank.
You meet them in person, hand to hand. Yeah, the only shaking going on in my boat is when I get a big one, because I still get amped up and excited. Every time I get a bite, it's like the first bite I ever got. I'm just like so amped up over it. I'm calm in the boat. I
Mhm.
don't get like, wow. In fact, Frankie will tell you, half the time he doesn't even know I got one on until it
Dude,
jumps.
you were getting amped on the crappie.
Oh, dude, yeah, dude, come on. Come on, man. I've caught more 2 pound crappie with you in 2 days than I have my entire life.
All right, Doug wants to know from Ohio what baits to throw in 39 and low 40-degree water. That's pretty much just go back and watch any of the winter episodes for day 4, right?
Yeah, but it's pretty simple. I mean, I lean on the jerk bait, the flash mob, some crankbaits and jigs. Most of
Pick
the
just
time,
pick 3, like the 3 main ones if he was going to go out there, because I think you've
jerk bait,
covered it.
flash mob, jig.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not like here the other day I went out, I just had 2 jerk bait rods out.
Winter is a
Because
good time because like I've had 4 rods rigged in the garage and I fished 4 jackpots, and all I've done is grab those rods and hop in my buddy's
yeah,
boat.
yeah. I mean, it's super easy because you're carrying enough tackle where you could probably hold with 2 hands, 1 hand, and your rod choices are real simple. You know, and I just don't make winter fishing complicated. The biggest thing about winter is finding them, because they don't, as you know from past winter shows, um, as the water cools, the bass start to shrink their water columns that they're using. So then you've got bass that are concentrated in a very like 9% of the water column in the winter.
Mhm.
They're like concentrated. And if you don't find them, you will not catch a single fish.
It doesn't
You
matter what color jig you got.
doesn't matter. You won't catch them. But if you find them, you could catch a fish. Even if you're doing the wrong thing or throwing the wrong thing, you'll get a bite. But you just got to remember in winter, if you get a bite, there's more fish there. So you better start figuring out why you only got 1 bite. You know what I mean?
All right. I'm going to save these jig questions and skirt questions because that is 100% going to be probably a top 5 show
Yeah, we're
when
doing
you
that.
start building the jigs.
We're
So we'll go to
doing that.
Clay, who will make a little pivot here. And he said, what adjustments do you make when the fish are eating your spinner bait blades? I've had a lot of
Oh,
instances where I get my blades stolen in the spring.
yeah, I've had that happen a ton also. So what I do first when that happens is I look at what kind of trailer I'm using. A lot of times when they're stealing blades off of me, I'll go to a trailer with more movement, like long, thin swim bait, or something with a hook tail that moves a lot, like a big 5-inch grub or something that moves a lot. I want the trailer to become,
The star of the show.
yeah, I want the trailer to become the focal point. When the blades attract the fish in, I want the trailer to become the focal point. Um, that's really what I do. Or sometimes you could change the skirt color, and get a better bite with the skirt color. But if they're hitting the blades, that means they're following the bait. That means the bait's bringing the fish to the bait, but your trailer's not doing its job. If they're taking the blade versus the trailer, the trailer's wrong. You got to switch trailers.
That's good stuff. Stuart is saying, Frank, I'm taking a trip to Lewis Smith the second week in June. Any suggestions now so I can start my research? So I guess don't even narrow it down to Lewis Smith. Just do it in general. You're a couple months out from a trip. What are some things that you can do now so you're ready
There.
and better prepared when you do hit the water for that trip?
Okay, so the first things first. You're going in June, so you look at the longitude, latitude where Smith is. Now, is the Lewis Smith the one in Alabama or the one in
Alabama
Virginia?
was spotted bass.
Okay, so now you're going to know that in June when you go down there, the fish are done spawning, so you're already starting to gear up on what you need to look for on the lake map. Okay, you could go in and start researching all the local tournaments that happened in June for the last couple seasons, couple years. See what kind of weights they're catching. And then you'll get an idea. If you look at if you look at the first place weights all the time, that's a skewed number. That's not what you can normally expect on an average. So go down to like sixth place, seventh place, eighth place in those tournaments. That's your average. That's what you could expect. So if you're doing better than that, you know you're going to be on the upper side. If you're doing worse than that, you know you got work to do. And then just go with your seasonal pattern routine for June and understand that when you get there, you may have to tweak it some. It might be a little ahead, it might be a little behind based on weather conditions for that season. So you just have to do that. But that's how I start all my research out. Especially when I was tournament fishing, I wanted to know what I needed to make a top 10, and I needed to know what the average fish was, and then so I could gauge how good or not good I'm doing in practice.
Jordan wants to know, when do you choose a trap versus a square bill versus a chatterbait?
Okay, it's not necessarily it's not necessarily muddy, cold, whatever. It's based on the fishery that I'm fishing. If
Okay.
if I like here, look, my rattle bait fishing is very specific. So I know if I'm fishing if I'm fishing gravel points, tapering banks, um, I'm trapping. If I go to there's a lot of blowdowns and what have you, I'm going to have my spinnerbait and my square bill out, and then the fish are going to tell me which one I need to be throwing. They never lie to you. Well, they lie all the time, but the reality of it is, on that given day, I've had situations where if you put the spinnerbait down, you were a moron. And I've had
Mhm.
days where if you put the square bill down, you were an idiot. So the fish are going to let you know what's going on. Now, personally, between us, I almost, when I'm fishing blowdowns, I almost prefer a square bill, just because it roots around, it ricochets, it does all kinds of stuff. I've had phenomenal spinnerbait days on blowdowns, but I've had a lot more on square bills.
Just to go back to the trailer question where it was eating the blades, Clay said that's perfect. He usually uses a Fluke Junior as a trailer, which has no action. So
Correct. You needed to get something moving where the bass gets close to that spinnerbait, and he's like, it's alive, and that's what the part is I got to eat.
have you ever had this issue? How do you stop your spinnerbait from tangling in your line every cast?
Yeah, that's because when you're throwing the spinnerbait, it's rolling in the air.
So you're getting basically you're rainbowing it.
The spinnerbait's tumbling.
Yeah.
So to prevent the tumbling, don't try to whale a cast out there. Do it nice and let the rod load up and
Little
let the
roll
spinnerbait
cast.
go. And it'll keep the spinnerbait, the triangle blade of the spinnerbait, when you cast, it'll keep it from tumbling. And that'll do your thing. The other thing, if your R bend is an open R bend, that helps a lot. But if it's a circle, it'll tangle a ton of times, because sometimes the spinnerbait, when you go to cast it out, it flips on itself. So open R bend is a little better than a closed one.
Great question from Steve. When you're throwing a jerk bait, do you keep your boat moving, or do you jerk while the boat is stopped? Like how are you doing your
Okay.
boat when you're throwing a jerk bait in the cold months?
Okay, so this
Good question.
yeah, it's a great question. This basically depends on the aggressive nature of the fish for that day, or how much water I have to cover. So I'm always I when I make my cast, I stop the boat in the wintertime. and I fish the cast without the boat moving. But I'm moving the boat constantly. I'm not sitting there in one spot making 50 casts. The bass are going to let you know they're there. I'm constantly moving, but when I make the cast and I do my retrieve, I want everything stationary because it's not warm. It's not as the weather's warming up and you're with the jerkbait, doing all that. It's, I pull it down, I twitch the rod tip, I leave it there and leave it there. And then I move it a little bit and leave it there. And then do with the rod tip and then leave it there. You're doing your cadence is very slow. Your pauses are much longer. As the water warms, you start to speed all that up. By the time you reach pre-spawn and post-spawn, I'm hammering the jerkbait, bang, 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 just keeping it going, keeping it moving. Even in the summertime on some of your smallmouth lakes, you could fish jerkbaits year round. I'm bang, bang, bang. I'm moving that thing. It's never stopping. So you just got to be, pay attention to what the fish want. But in the wintertime, it's slow and methodical. But if you stop and you waste too much time in one spot, you can't cover enough water to find them. Once you find fish and you start getting bit, you can slow down and mill around in an area.
Sean wants to know, when he catches a fish, a spinnerbait gets all out of tune and whacked up, what is the best way to tune your spinnerbait straight again?
Okay, so it's just like a crankbait almost. However the spinnerbait's rolling, you just bend the wire the opposite way so it compensates and corrects itself.
I mean, when a spinnerbait is tuned properly, it should be like a crankbait to where no matter how fast you reel it, it stays vertical in the water and doesn't roll or go over on its side, correct?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I have some that I have oversized blades on that I designed for super slow rolling. If I burn those in, they're going to roll because the blades are moving too much water for the weight of the spinnerbait head. But your spinnerbait on the retrieve that you're using should track straight. It shouldn't be to the side. It should track straight. This helps it when you hit something to bounce over it and more snag resistant.
If you're reeling it in and your spinnerbait's all wonky, and this is what drove me nuts about Jeffries. Great fisherman, enjoyed fishing, good angler, smart angler. Not saying he never was, but he left 3 inches on his tag end, and he never, whenever he was throwing a spinnerbait, it'd be like 5 inches. It'd just be a straight freaking line. I mean, there's never any form to the spinnerbait. It drove me absolutely nuts. I mean, the thing's like coming in on its side like a damn stealth fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, like cut the tag end and get that thing to where it's running true. Right. That's how it's designed to run.
Right. So the other thing is too, if you're, it depends on blade size, head weight, and bulk of your skirt and trailer, also. But like I said, I have spinnerbaits that are designed for nothing but slow rolling, and that's a whole different story.
I'll let you answer the toughest question of the day. Scott wants to know, he does the index for the show. He's like, what are we talking about today? So I'll let you answer that question. What?
We're talking about toxic chemical spills, jig skirts.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge show today.
I would say
odds and ends.
Odds and ends.
Yeah, it's a catch-up show, odds and ends, questions from previous shows, a little bit of brainstorming on shows that are going on, some current events. There is no, it's not like last week's where we really dove into something.
Correct.
Trey was wanting to know, yeah, that's the same thing you do with the buzzbait too.
Yes, exactly. I'm just waiting.
How do you store? Here's one. How do you store your buzz baits? That's a good question.
Okay, I'm on my buzz baits. I have my regular Plano box, and I have one section that's longer, and I put the buzz baits in there so they're stacked, almost like chairs. Mm-hmm. You know how you can get the blades to lay on top of each other, and I just stack them that way in there.
Okay. No skirts on those either.
No skirts on those either. No.
Okay.
I can't help it. You can't. It's just easier for me to go, And I'm just going to use this as an example. Oh, blue glimmer in this watercolor. Oh, chartreuse and white in this watercolor. Oh, black for this. You know what I mean? It's just easy to do that.
Jimmy Juice Newton, he said, "Hey, I just got on. I want to make sure Frank is safe from the Palestine ordeal. We've only seen a slight twitch in his left eye a couple times."
Exactly. It'd be like,
and then he also said under his breath that color doesn't matter. So clearly, his brain is.
God.
Uncle Frank, this is a good question. Do you speed crank in the winter ever? And if so, what is your favorite crankbait to do that with? I'm assuming he's talking about, do you ever fish to generate a reaction bite in the winter?
Yeah, I do. But most of the time up here, I don't know how far south you are, but up here we're talking 38, 39 degree water temperature. Now I've caught them on crankbaits, not burning them in, but snatching them through grass or crawling them over rock. And it's the deflection that gets the bite. So if I crawl it over a rock and it comes over the rock, I immediately pause it for a second. And that's normally when the bite happens. When I'm fishing it and snatching it through the grass, the minute I rip it through the grass, I stop it for a second. And that's where the bite occurs. Most of the time. I have caught them just flat out, just cranking in the winter, but
he said he's on Kentucky Lake.
Yeah. So you're similar, but not similar. You can catch them cranking in the winter on Kentucky Lake. If you find them on some of those ledges, you can crank them there in the winter. There may be better ways to catch them though. So if he's on Kentucky Lake, he's close to Fast Bass Marine then.
Which is who actually ended up getting you back on the water.
Yeah, they actually fixed my boat. And I am very grateful. And it was worth the 2 trips of 16 hours to do it.
Have you ever considered doing any guidance stuff, Frank?
I used to back in the old days, and I am not ever considering it.
Just not your thing.
No, I mean, I did. The steelhead game was fun. It was fun guiding for steelhead. It was you're one-on-one. You're down and dirty. You're wading in the creeks, you're wading in the rivers, or float boating them, and it's kind of fun. The bass guiding game got to be a little tricky for me back when I was doing it because I started taking only businessmen that didn't fish or didn't have boats.
So they couldn't come back.
Yeah, because a lot of times our lakes are so small up here, it's not worth it. You give up one spot here and you lose it forever. You can't do it. So I quit doing it.
All right, Scott wants to know, do you have a spinnerbait that you like to use for slow rolling on the bottom where the blades still turn? Is there a specific slow rolling spinnerbait that you use?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is, but there's different conditions. When I'm fishing, I'll just say from 1 to 4 feet, I have a 1/4 ounce that I use. When I'm fishing deeper than that, I'll go 1/2 and 3/4.
So you're using just the weight of the spinnerbait to dictate how close to the bottom you're fishing it.
Correct.
Based on how deep it is. So you could slow roll a 3/8 or a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait in 4 foot of water.
Absolutely, 100%.
And you're just going to match it to
the depth.
Okay.
Because here you can't. If you were going to slow roll a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait in 15 feet of water, you can't keep it on the bottom. You're near the bottom.
Yeah, you would have to use smaller willow leaf blades to keep it down.
Right, but then you're defeating the purpose. Yep. You want a lot of vibration, a lot of,
Take a couple more questions before we wrap this thing up here. This is a really good question from Ronnie. When you're dragging a tube, is it better to use a 60 degree, 90 degree on your jig head and then a vertical or a horizontal line tie?
Okay, so the 60 degree is okay if you're wind drifting, where you got your drift socks out, your boat's slowly moving, and your bait's just ticking along the bottom. I find that with the 60 degree, and the horizontal line tie, I'm losing my bottom feel with it because it wants to swim more. So that in that point, I'll go, to the vertical and a 90. If I'm casting it, I'll go vertical 90. If I'm dragging it with the wind, then I'll go 60. But for the most part, I try to get, I'll go, I go with the tubes. I go as heavy as I can possibly go and just be bumping the bottom without driving it in the rocks. I just want it touching stuff on the bottom. And so it's mostly the weight. But I found the 60-degree horizontal, I don't have the same feel with it.
Hey, here's a question that you can answer with one word. Does red or hot craw color work in Ohio?
Absolutely, yes.
That was two, but
okay, yes. Or wait, absolutely.
Either of those, either or, just not a combination. That's two
just
words.
One. The red is the most mind blowing thing to me, ever, because realistically, the Louisiana swamp crayfish is red and black. There are some reddish colored crayfish in Texas, but red works in cold water periods all across this country, no matter where I'm at, and no matter how clean the water is, it works. It just blows me away how that works.
Frank, show 103. It's been a mellow show today. I've covered a vast array of topics. I do want to remind everybody I have the Hanes Beefy Tea Day 4 loaded to the cork shirt. A lot of you guys have bought it. We've seen a lot of the comments and the deal. That is, for lack of a better phrase, that's how Uncle Frank is probably going to pay for the boat and the motor.
No, I'm going to cut out one of my kids' college. Couple months of college.
You're fixing to have one kidney here pretty soon.
Yeah, my one son's not gonna graduate this year.
Sell the kidney on the black market. But that is still available. BassZone.com shop BTL, that you can get the loaded to the cork stuff still and all the rest of the Bass Zone merch. And then we are a week or two away. Well, we got, what is today, the 16th? We'll have a show next week. And then we're just like 3 weeks away from the Bassmaster Classic. So we'll have more info on where, because you will be there and I will be there.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have 100%. More info on where, when, and what that you can come meet Uncle Frank at the Classic. And then as far as all of the winners and all that stuff that we have done, giveaways on the show, all that stuff is out and sent.
It's out and sent. It is out. Gone. Ready to be knocking at your door and get it.
Good stuff. All right. Like most people, I think we'll probably then transition over to either the BPT or the Elite Series, depending on what your flavor is, or you can split screen both.
Absolutely.
Split screen both. There's nothing wrong with that. Frank, glad to hear you're safe from the plume.
I'm safe from the plume.
And a little hodgepodge show today, but this has been day 4, number 103.
Yay.
With the man, Frank Scalish. We will talk to everybody. Well, I'll talk to everybody Monday, but we'll see you next Thursday, Uncle Frank.
Absolutely.
Get back out on the water 3-4 times this week. You got the ride. You are locked and loaded. You're fishing.
I'm fishing.
All right. We'll talk to everyone next week. See ya.